Hey, what's up, my people? John Middlekauff, new YouTube channel. What I need you to do, subscribe, like the video, leave a comment, share with your friends. Appreciate everyone that has. It's the podcast, 3 and Out. You can listen wherever you listen to podcasts. Apple, Spotify. We got you covered. Also, thevolume.com. We got merch right here. FlexFit hat. Go to thevolume.com. Get yourself a 3 and Out hat. What is going on, everybody? Happy early May. Summer basically here. And so is football because Tom Brady got roasted on Netflix for hours. Want to dive into my takeaways and overall, why would he do that? Like, I got a theory on why he would do that. Obviously, money is a big part, and I would imagine it was for a lot. Speaking of a lot of money, Stephen Ross, the owner of the Miami Dolphins, reportedly turns out $10 billion. I have a couple thoughts with that. Timing of injuries with guys returning, I think, is something we don't talk about enough. And then we'll just bang through some NFL stories. The Pats are now conducting a search for their GM. All the fifth-year options, 18 of them out of 32 were picked up. Joe Burrow finally throwing again, and Odell Beckham signs with Stephen Ross's Miami Dolphins for a little less money than he got last year. So there's still a lot going on. Rookie mini camps will take place, a couple last week, some this week, and then OTAs when veteran players, most of them, I mean, we'll have some holdout guys, and the whole team will be on the field. Coaches will be talking, coordinators be talking, star players be talking, and we'll get another month plus out of the football world going until we all just kind of take a deep breath and enjoy the summer. Not necessarily as podcasters, but the football coaches and players get to definitely take a lot of time off for about, 35, 45, given when you have to report for training camp. So we will dive into all this. But first, I got to tell you about my close personal friends and partners, Game Time, the official ticketing app of this podcast. Sure, you see these guys everywhere, rightfully so, because I've been using a lot of different ticketing apps over my lifetime. And since being involved with these guys and using them for everything I've done, whether it's go to a concert, whether it's go to a game, whether it be a baseball game, a hockey game, a basketball game. I mean, I've been to more events in the last year and a half than I had been in like 5 years previously because of these guys. Go to their app, download it. You can go to anything, concerts, comedy shows, obviously pro or college sports. Search the venue, search the team you want to see, and then just sign up and use the promo code JOHN. To me, summer is definitely about doing some stuff, relaxing. Go to a baseball game, get a few brewskis, get some sun. Go to a concert, on a Friday or Saturday night. Enjoy yourself. Take your wife, take your girlfriend, take some buddies, and do it with us because we're throwing you a little discount with the promo code John. So take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the app, the Game Time app, create an account, and use the code JOHN for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem the code JOHN for $20 off. Download the Game Time app today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. The Tom Brady Roast. Complete transparency here. We've all been seeing the ads if you flip into Netflix or social media, Instagram, Twitter, wherever, LinkedIn, I don't know, wherever you're, TikTok. My first reaction over the last couple weeks leading until Sunday night was, this is going to be stupid. Like, honestly, I'm probably not going to watch because my expectations were low. I think it would probably be pretty cringy. I was not expecting a NC-17 version of what I want in a roast. And I didn't start it when it started live. But I'm cooking some steaks, made some nachos in the air fryer, highly recommend for Cinco de Mayo. And I'm out by the barbecue, getting the meat ready. And I'm just kind of scrolling on Twitter. And I'm seeing all the clips from Edelman, from Belichick, from Kevin Hart. I'm like, God, they're kind of letting it rip. So when I got into bed, give or take about 9 o'clock, I'm an old man, I know. I turned that thing on. Now, it's long. No spoilers here because it just came out. And I know a lot of people this isn't 1998. We're not all watching the same thing at time, but it's 3 hours long. And I I ended up going to bed probably like 11:45. I fast forward through a couple things. Like I knew Affleck, according to the internet, wasn't that good. But I'm telling you, I was blown away. I laughed out loud constantly. And like I said, my expectations couldn't have been higher. Because if you told me something like this was going to happen with someone of Brady's stature, I would expect it to kind of be closer to PG than X-rated. And I got news for you. This is not for kids. So if you have an 8-year-old, a 10-year-old, when I was 10 or 12, I would have found a way to watch it. But I know a lot of people, a lot of swearing, a lot of vulgar stuff, which is what I want in one of these events. And here's where I give Brady credit. Now, we'll get into why he did it. So ultimately, you're doing it for money. But he's already insanely wealthy. Can you imagine? Let's think of a couple other athletes that are his fame, if not more famous, right? Tiger Woods or LeBron James. There's no amount of money you could pay those guys to do what Tom Brady just did. Zero. It would not happen. Obviously, Tiger would never even think about it because the roast would be so incredible, but he would never do it. And for Tom, whose image, and I go on Gottlieb's show. He does a radio show for Fox Sports. I go on every Tuesday. And I think last week we talked about it, like, what's the point of this? And he had a theory that Tom's trying to kind of change his image because there was a huge negative image at the end of his New England run, right? He was kind of a villain. A lot of people didn't like him, I guess. I never really felt that way. I guess if you were a Jets fan or a Dolphins fan or a Chiefs fan or a football fan, you rooted against him. But I've never met anyone that's like, Tom Brady's a scumbag. You've literally never heard one teammate, not one teammate that he's ever played with, say a bad word about the guy. Not one. I've never heard it. Obviously, him and Bill butted heads, but as a human being, like, people love the guy. He's got this weird way of being this super famous, super rich, super accomplished guy, but kind of relating with practice squad guys, relating with random players, let alone his star group of players. And when he did this, and they were just letting it fly from the jump, talking a ton about Giselle and the Karate Kid that she's now dating, I was blown away. It was excellent. It's one of the most shocked. Like, sometimes you turn on a show because if you read about it and then it's really good, like this show, I think it's called like Reindeer Man or something. Pretty good show, pretty entertaining. But I didn't have necessarily any expectations besides, it was kind of crazy. My expectations couldn't have been any lower because my expectations of these super famous guys, they love to control the message and it can be really cringe and it just can get really weird. And that wasn't this way at all. They came out of the gates swinging. So props to Netflix, who obviously has business. They have a dog in this fight, right? All the comedians that were there, I'm sure they're all intertwined, doing specials on the platform. So this is good business. But to get him, no matter how much money you are paying him, to give the thumbs up, a lot of credit. Because I think what we want, what is really in, I listened to some of the Eddie Vedder interview with Simmons, Pearl Jam lead singer. And I think, and listen, I'm a sucker. Like the most, I would say the genres of music, I'm a music guy. Like I listen to everything. But I would say the things I most consistently listen to would be like 90s music in general, but specifically like grunge rock and country music. I would say country on the pie chart's pretty high, but grunge music is right up there. And there was a raw and realness to that group and that era of music. And I think it really resonated with a lot of people. And I think then we got very corporate for a long period of time. And now we're shifting back to the corporate lingo BS. We tune out. We don't watch you. I'm sure many people have seen some of the stats of some of these legacy media, television, newspapers. They're in the tank. We just don't really consume them anymore. And some of these unfiltered, answer to nobody, independent, quote unquote, content creators, that could be Rogan, that could be whoever, crush. I mean, dominate. I'm in the golf world. I love golf. Do you know who dominates in the golf world? Independent YouTube creators. They get more people to watch their stuff, and they can do whatever the hell they want. They shoot their own videos, put it up, them playing golf, and they get more people to watch than PGA Tour tournaments. You know why? Because we like people that we think are being real. And that's what that was last night. It was a lot of stuff that was real and they were letting it fly. And it got a little weird at times. Now, what's not real is, what's weird about Tom is clearly has fake hair. He's got some work done. Same with Affleck. Yet he still feels in a weird way kind of relatable for being a guy with hundreds of millions of dollars, married to a supermodel for everyone forever, looks kind of fake now. It's like, God, Tom seems pretty cool, even in a weird way. Like he's obviously does some weird stuff with his health. How do you blame him, though? It worked. He played till he was 45. He won a Super Bowl at 42, 43 years old. But I can't recommend it enough. And I would have thought a week ago, if I was, one, I wouldn't have watched, and two, that I would ever have given it like 2 thumbs up. No chance. Couldn't have seen it. And I like raw. I like things that make people uncomfortable. And that's what good comedy is. You should be like, damn. And there was a lot of that. So excellent production. Now, here's the question I have. Why would Tom do it? And one constant joke is the crypto scam. He lost, they say 30 million. If they're saying 30 million, shit, it might have been 50 million. If I had to take an educated guess, now I don't exactly, I've never done a Netflix special. How much Netflix paid him, I don't know if they do it over how many people watch, how many people subscribe, if it's a flat rate. My guess would be that number is way higher than you imagine. My guess would be closer to 50 million than like 10 million. I would be stunned if over the course of a week, tens of millions of people don't watch that show. If you told me that over a month span, 100 million people watch, I'd believe you. At least bits and pieces of it. Like, that's what I would expect. Tom Brady's trying to buy a piece of the Raiders. He already did. And then the NFL said, no, you can't buy it at that price. Why? Because the NFL didn't want Mark Davis to sell him, while it's a tiny piece of the team, whatever percentage it ends up being, 1%, 2%, 5%, at a discounted rate. We're not into diluting our assets. So if your franchise is valued, let's just pick a number. You say $5 billion, Mark Davis could easily sell it for more than that. Let's say 5. Whatever the percent he is buying that, it's based off that number. You can't just say, hey, we'll give you a couple percent, give us $30 million. And the value of these teams, as we'll talk about Stephen Ross, is astronomical. Well, just because you're super rich doesn't mean you're super liquid. So maybe Tom went, listen, this is going to be uncomfortable. And I bet the one thing that he had to think long and hard of is they were going to come at him hard for Giselle. And even if he can't stand her anymore, he does have children. And those kids are going to watch that. And that's where it gets weird. Like Tom, and I'm just assuming, does not give a shit what she thinks at this point in time. But he does care deeply about his children and what they're going to think about, talking about who her mom's sleeping with. Even though Tom probably doesn't even care. He's got a lot of options. But I wonder if they made that number that, like, okay, now I'm much more liquid to be able to pull this off. Because the NFL pushed back about that initial number, whatever Mark Davis was cool with taking. And, like, that's not enough money, which I totally understand from the NFL standpoint. We don't give away, I don't care how famous or how cool the guy is. Like, the number's a number here. We're in the business of boosting these valuations. We all benefit from that. That's my theory, is that this number that he got last night, or will get over the course of the next couple months, is huge. And instead of having to sell assets or whatever he has to do to liquidate himself, he can just get a large piece of that from this. And we've seen over the years, Netflix throws a lot of money around. And they've gotten much more specific about what they do now than they did 7-8 years ago, when they just paid and probably wasted money. They had a pretty good idea this was going to work. And they clearly paid a premium for a lot of people. Kevin Hart, Peyton Manning's there, Bill Belichick's there. It was excellent. The heavy hitters were there. You got Harbaugh, Kyle Shanahan in attendance, Kardashian. It felt like a big, big event. And we just don't get those anymore. Now, it's different because when I was a kid, the equivalent of this event never would have looked like this, because it would have been on ABC or CBS and you wouldn't have been able to swear, which I like this world we live in much more. Like, this is how people talk, especially in the football world. So let them, and comedians, let them talk how they're going to talk. And it just goes on Netflix, which last time I checked have hundreds of millions of people that subscribe. I would say Netflix currently is infinitely larger than CBS, ABC, NBC. More people on a nightly basis click to go to Netflix when they're in their bed or in their living room than they do those channels now. And obviously those channels still function well with the older demographic. But when you factor in the entire population, just domestically, it's probably not a fair fight. And that pie chart will only grow and grow for Netflix. So my guess is they paid $100 million plus just to put this on, pay for everyone to come. And this will help Tom kind of maybe get over the hump and officially become that Raiders minority owner, which will also put an end to his ability to play anymore. The NBA playoffs are heating up, and so is the action at DraftKings Sportsbook, an official sports betting partner of the NBA. With same-game parlays, live betting, odds boosts, and so much more. Don't miss out as the NBA postseason winds down. And if you're new to DraftKings, you got to check this out. New customers bet $5 to get $150 in bonus bets instantly. Download the DraftKings Sportsbook app now and use the code JOHN, that's code JOHN, for new customers to get $150 in bonus bets when you bet just $5. Only on DraftKings. The crown is yours. Stephen Ross. I think a lot of people are like, damn. These NFL teams aren't normal bidding processes. You're not putting it on the open market like you would with a house or a car or even a normal business. Like, hey, what's it worth? Because the NFL doesn't typically sell to random people. And obviously the pool of people that can afford to spend $3, $4, $5, $8 billion is very, very small. But if you look at the recent people that bought into the NFL, it has been minority owners. Jimmy Haslam was a minority owner. David Tepper was a minority owner. These people have already been involved in the league. And then they just basically get the first right when these teams become available. If you put some of these franchises on the open market and had a true bidding, like the Miami Dolphins, which is obviously one of the most desirable cities in this country, it has massive tax advantages from the ability to build your team for your own business, for yourself. And then you just factor in the league, how much the league guarantees you can't lose money. It's impossible to fail. It is truly one of the great American businesses going on right now. They have a fixed contract with the television networks that ensure their ability to be positive, no matter what. Because the highest cost that they'll ever have is the salary cap, and the number they get from the TV deal split between 32 teams is dramatically higher. The salary cap's $210 million. They got a $410 million check. You do the math. You're in pretty good shape. And I'm not even factoring in anything else. Nothing involved with the stadium, nothing involved with any other sales. So when I read that Stephen Ross turned down $10 billion, I saw a lot of reaction like, that's crazy. It's not crazy at all. One, even if he thought about selling it, if you sell it for $10 billion, you're only seeing half. You couldn't spend that money. Stephen Ross is an older guy if you tried. So the money for a guy that's already very, very wealthy, it's kind of in a weird way irrelevant. Two, his entire life, he's part of this business where his entire life is built through the business. Everything he does, the majority of it at least, is expensed through his business. He lives through the Dolphins. Factoring in the lines of credit he gets to operate because of the value of the team, it would actually make no financial sense to sell the team when it is valued as much as it is. When you factor in what you get back, you get the cash, great. You lose the most important thing you have, the asset that has the cash and the value where you don't have any risk. Like, it's a risk-free business. Think about Mark Davis, who in the Davis family have always, at least until recently, been one of the more cash-poor organizations in the league. If you put the Raiders on a true open auction, when you factor in the new stadium, when you factor in the city they live in, when you factor in just projecting how many people are moving to the state because of its tax advantages and the growing market that is the greater Las Vegas area, I think he'd get $8 billion. But why in the hell would he ever sell? Now, the thing with him, he doesn't have children. Stephen Ross does, and he wants to keep it in the family. There are obviously variables at play, but I just saw Mark Davis built a $20 million house in Henderson, Nevada. How do you think he did that? Who do you think's giving him the loan? Why do you think he can get a big loan without even flinching? Because of the business he has. Doesn't have to use his own cash. Doesn't even matter if he has cash in the bank or not. He gets it through his team. Why people that own businesses, you get massive, massive advantages. The game's a little rigged. Now you got to take the risk. Now, some of these people were born into it, like Mark. Steven, I think, bought the team. But when you have something this valuable, it makes zero sense when there aren't, rocky times ahead. It's one thing if you hey, see some weird shit going on in the future. Okay, get out. But doesn't really feel like that, at least for the foreseeable future when it comes to being an NFL owner. So when I see that Stephen Ross turned down $10 billion, I think every owner would turn that down. You know what's funny is Aaron Rodgers is full speed ahead. They say he's going to be full go at OTAs. He was last year, and remember, he pulled a calf muscle, but he was able to practice, and it brought all this positive buzz, and he was going to hockey games and MSG, and it was just fun, right? It was like, God, Rodgers is changing the Jets. And then he gets hurt on opening night, Monday Night Football. If you are going to get injured, now let's factor this in. The Achilles injury when I was growing up in the 90s ended careers. You were never the same. You were done. It clearly is much closer to what the ACL became over the last 20 years than what it once was. It does not ruin a career. You can not only come back, but play at a pretty high level. Now, unlike a lot of guys that have torn Achilles in younger years, this guy is 40 years old. And even before he tore his Achilles, when you watched him move around, he didn't quite move the same. But when you get injured with a massive injury, whether it be an ACL, whether it be an Achilles, your timeline is dramatically different than, say, Kirk Cousins, who basically got injured 2 months later, who's not going to be available at OTAs. It's why it brings in the question of, well, what's going to happen when Michael Penix has taken all the 1 reps and he looks good and all the teammates like him? Dre Greenlaw tore his Achilles in the Super Bowl. It's fair to say that he won't be ready any means the first couple months of the season. That's why the 49ers tried to sign Eric Kendricks, who ultimately flip-flopped and went to the Cowboys because he's boys with Mike Zimmer. And I saw some quotes from him. He's like, yeah, I just wasn't really guaranteed a role. I knew at the end of the day, if guys are healthy, I'm playing a backup role. But they were signing me basically as a contingency plan if Greenlaw's not able to go. But if he is and looks okay, then he's going to play because he's a better player in 2024 than an older version of Kendricks. The timing of injuries is so big when it comes to a season ender. When you get injured in the playoffs, when you get injured in the Super Bowl, that timeline, you're talking early on in the season, I can't count on you. For as shitty as the Achilles injury was for ruining the Jets season, and it ruined their season. Who knows how good they were going to be, but once he went down, they had no chance. None. Even though they won that night against the Bills, their season ended the moment that guy got carted back to the locker room. On the bright side, he's going to be raring and ready to go. So if you also would have missed the playoffs and he would have torn his Achilles in December, it might not have been the same. I don't give a shit what doctors are telling him and what rehab he was doing. It also gave him the capability to kind of look in the mirror right away and I want to battle back. So listen, the first glass half full thing I've said about the Jets in a while is the timing of that injury, if he was going to get hurt, I would say worked out pretty well. eBay Motors is here for the ride. The first car I ever got, I was 16 years old, and my grandpa gave me a ride. And like any young lad who got a car that, let's face it, would not have been my first choice, I had to touch it up a little bit. And we tinted out the windows. We added a big subwoofer to the back, and you could hear me from miles away coming home. My parents sure loved me for that one. So did my neighbors. But I think the key to any young person getting a car is to personalize a little bit, because you're probably not going to get your dream car. And as you get older, you kind of become a car person or you don't. But you definitely have preferences, right? Some of us like bigger cars. I know I do. I've only had big cars, SUVs. And there are certain non-negotiables. I like 3 rows of seats. Now, ideally, I don't have kids right now, so I take out that 3rd row seat, and I like a big, I like a lot of trunk room. Some people, don't like SUVs, like smaller cars. I've never been that big since my high school car of tinting the windows. I don't care if you see me or not, but I know some people, like, the first thing they do is tint the windows. It's crazy. The older you get, I had to have the subwoofers. The subwoofer, I couldn't listen to music for 5 minutes with the subwoofer like I did when I was younger. But there is something very, very special about that first car. I don't care how many cars you get since, how much money you make to get sweeter cars. You never quite forget that first ride and some of the memorable moments that you had in it in your high school years. So with over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die, you can make sure your ride stays running smoothly. Brake kits, LED headlights, roof rack bumpers, whatever your baby needs, eBay Motors has it. And with eBay Guaranteed Fit, it's guaranteed to fit your ride the first time, every time, or your money back. Plus, at these prices, you're burning rubber, not cash. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only, exclusions apply. Let's fly around the NFL. The schedule release is, they don't come out with a specific date, but it's looking like either within the next 14 days. Isn't it crazy how big the schedule release is? You could argue that the schedule release in the NFL and the buzz it creates and the interest that people paying attention is bigger than any regular season baseball or basketball game. We already know who's playing who. Hell, we even know some of the games. Eagles, Packers, Brazil. We're just finding out when they play them. When your bye week is, when your Thursday week is, who's playing on Christmas, how many Monday night games you get. But we know, as of today, like we've known for a while, every one of your opponents, home and away. So it's not like you don't even have the home schedule. You know exactly who you're playing. They just tell you the order and on what network. And even that is subject to change. Who's good, who sucks, flex schedules. I would say the schedule release, more than any other thing in the NFL, in the offseason, post-Super Bowl, is the most symbolic moment of the entire operation's importance. I've never heard of anyone talking about like the baseball schedule my entire life in the offseason. The NBA schedule, who discusses this stuff? This is not only a discussion point, like it's a really, really big deal. Now I get it. Football, every game is much more important. Days you play, travel, flying East Coast to West Coast or West Coast to East Coast, or short weeks, or you got to stay in one area because you got to, you play out. If you're a West Coast team, you play Tampa and then you're playing the Panthers the next week. So you're just going to stay at, wherever. But it's pretty wild, the power of just this basic 1 hour. Schedules get released, things get leaked. It's just kind of leaves me speechless sometimes when I think about it. The Patriots, I've been saying for a while, I'm out. I've been out. Like I'm not in. Even though I like Drake May. I do. And I'm not a Patriot hater. For 20 plus years, I not only admired them, in a weird way at times, I rooted for them. Love Belichick and Tom. I'm a Fresno State guy. A ton of Fresno State guys played for them over the years. I got to know guys that worked there in the front office. But I think their operation feels very weird. They fired Belichick. They had the opportunity to start from scratch. Elliott Wolf, who has been in the mix to be a GM at different places for like the last 5 years, basically got elevated to run the offseason. But they didn't give him the job. Why would you, during a transitional period, and he may end up getting the job, and maybe he will, but not just give him the job when you gave Gerard Mayo the job? Why would you leave it to chance that, like, yeah, this guy might not be the guy. We might go in a different direction. It just feels a little chaotic. And Bob Kraft at the roast really tries to, like, make it less awkward than it's become. Like, Bob, you guys trashed fucking Belichick. Trashed him. Which, again, you fired him. You told us you were ready to move on. That's fine. But to, like, try to trash his legacy, it feels like this, I don't know, insecurity with the Kraft family. But this feels a little weird. Now, maybe, listen, Bill didn't give coordinator titles a lot of times with some younger coaches officially, sometimes to the season. Sometimes he didn't have them during the season. Obviously, internally, he had them. So maybe they're trying to do a little bit of that. But I just don't understand letting a guy run your entire offseason unless you've given him the wink handshake. But I don't think they did. And I understand there are logistics behind it. You can't officially give him the job, but you could have just ran a normal search and still given him the job. So it just, the Patriots just feel a little chaotic to me. Odell Beckham signed with the Dolphins. And I know a lot of people get mad. Like, why did people talk about Odell Beckham so much? He hasn't been relevant in a long time. He's way more famous than he is good as a player. Obviously, Baltimore paid him too much last year. Now, there were circumstances in terms of Lamar pressured them, and they did that to make Lamar happy. One thing I heard from people in Baltimore, they fucking love the guy. How hard he worked, how good of a mentor he was to the younger players, how hard he blocked. So the Odell Beckham that we used to talk about, the one-handed catches, some of the diva stuff, I actually think he's much more embraced the type player that he is currently in his early 30s. He's just a really, really good role player who tries hard. Look at Clowney. Like, Clowney now is just a really, really solid role player and a guy you want on the team, a guy that you can win with. Well, the Ravens had both those guys last year. And up until the Chiefs kind of punked them and Lamar and Todd Monken went into a shell, they were the best team in football start to finish. And and they valued those two guys. So, like, sometimes the perception when you get really famous follows you around. And you as a player / person aren't the same guy that you were 5 years ago. We all mature. We all change. Well, ideally, high-level people do. And from talking to enough people, Odell definitely has. And this number, in the low millions makes a lot more sense because he is a good role player and he will block, which is something that is very important to Mike McDaniel in an offense that when they're not throwing bombs to Waddle and Tyreek, like, he's going to try to run the ball. Joe Burrow threw for the first time, at least publicly, put out a video. Looks good. And when we're doing our hierarchies of, the Chiefs, the Ravens, the Niners, the Lions, if this guy's healthy, the Bengals are a major factor. You could argue of all the games played, he played the best game I saw. And I watched, 85, 90% of NFL games last year. As the season went on, like, I wasn't watching Panthers, Falcons, but any game that mattered, and most people listening probably did too, the game he played against the 49ers was like, I had a scout at the combine say he thought that was the best film he saw all season long from anyone. This was a pro scout. I'm like, yeah, I concur, man. That was like Joe Montana meets Tom Brady meets Peyton Manning. So if this guy's healthy, the Bengals, and let's face it, there's been one team beside Brady and Belichick in the AFC that has beat these guys in the playoffs. It was Burrow. on the road too. So if he's healthy, which is a fair question, can he stay healthy? I hope he does because I like watching great players. The Bengals are going to be a fucking problem. And when he started getting healthy as the season went on, before he hurt his elbow or wrist or whatever he ended up injuring, they were a major problem. They were coming. So they're just a team that, and I do this disservice sometimes. You forget about him. You can't forget about him when he's on the field and healthy. Last year he had the calf in training camp, obviously the elbow, he's had the knee. He's got to find a way to keep him on the field because when he's on the field, he's a dominant player. Last but not least, 18 of the 32 first rounders who were eligible for a fifth-year option had theirs picked up. That's a pretty good year. As Schefter ran the numbers before the draft, it was under 50%. That's 56%. Some of those guys, the Sewells, Devontae Smith, Parsons, and Chase Will, got big extensions. So I just think that it was a good draft. It does feel a little bit more like an outlier. The year before had 13 out of 32. So over the course of 2 years, it was 31 out of 64, which is under 50%. To me, if you said over the course of 20 years, what would you expect? I would expect the number to be like 15.5 or 16.2. 18 is probably about as good as you're going to do. But it does just show you, for as excited as we are, and every fan of their first round pick, at minimum, on a good year, 14 guys are not going to get it picked up. Now, just because you don't get it picked up doesn't mean that you can't have a huge fourth year and I give you a contract extension. But I would say if we did a study on that, guys that don't have their fifth year option picked up, that sign a second contract with the drafting team, probably pretty low. It's very, very rare. Very rare. I remember it happened once with the Bears, with the corner, Fuller, I think his name was. Is that who it was? Yeah. But it doesn't happen very often. So celebrate when teams get it right.